Have you ever, found yourself really believing in something you just can't see? Like a future you're aiming for, or this hope that feels so real,
Yeah.
but it's just not here yet.
Oh, absolutely. It's a really powerful part of being human, isn't it? That certainty about things you can't actually point to, acting on hope.
Yeah, exactly. And that whole idea, that powerful feeling, is what we're diving into today. We're exploring this incredible collection of stories, all found in Hebrews chapter 11.
Right. So our goal really is to unpack what this specific text says faith looked like for different people throughout history. What can we learn from them and, from the definition the chapter gives us right up front.
Okay, yeah, let's jump right in, because it starts immediately, doesn't it, with this core definition. Now faith is being sure of what we hope for and certain of what we do not see.
That's it. That's the foundation for everything else. It's not presented as just wishful thinking, but as like a present conviction. You're sure about future hopes, and you're certain about current unseen realities.
And right away it says that's why the ancients were commended. This quality, this faith, is what set them apart.
Exactly. And interestingly, the very first example isn't even about a person doing something, but about understanding the whole universe. It says, by faith, we get that the universe was formed at God's command.
So that what is seen was not made out of what was visible. Okay, unpack that a little.
Well, it's saying faith is the lens you need to understand creation. It's believing that this physical world didn't just emerge from other physical stuff we could see, but from an unseen, powerful command, God's word.
Believing the invisible command created the visible world. That definitely changes how you see things. Okay, so from that huge scale, it zooms into individual lives. First up is Abel.
Right, Abel. His faith led him to offer a better sacrifice than Cain did.
And the result. God commended him as righteous, acknowledged the offering.
Yeah, and then there's this fascinating bit. By faith, he still speaks even though he's dead. So his faithful action, rooted in that unseen certainty, it echoes. It keeps having an impact.
That's a powerful thought. And moving on from Abel, we get Enoch, who's a bit more mysterious.
Very mysterious. His faith meant he was taken from this life without dying. Just gone. Could not be found because God had taken him away.
And crucially, before that happened, he was commended as one who pleased God, which leads straight into this major principle, doesn't it?
It really does. The text lays it out plain. Without faith, it is impossible to please God. Full stop.
And then it defines what that faith involves. You have to believe, one, that he exists, belief in the unseen God, and two, that he rewards those who earnestly seek him.
So it's not just believing that God is there, but believing he actively rewards those who seek him. That's pretty key for the stories that follow, like Noah.
Right, Noah. He was warned about things not yet seen, a massive flood, something totally outside his experience.
Completely unseen, unimaginable probably. And his response, driven by faith, in holy fear, built an ark to save his family. I mean, can you imagine the neighbors building this huge boat miles from any sea?
Yet the commitment involved based purely on that unseen warning is staggering. And the text says this act, his faith, condemned the world, but made him an heir of the righteousness that comes by faith. His belief led to action that saved his family and aligned him with God's promise.
Which brings us to Abraham, a giant figure in this chapter.
Absolutely. When God called him to go to a place he would later receive as his inheritance, what did he do? He obeyed and went.
Even though he did not know where he was going. Just like that. Faith is obedience, trusting the caller without seeing the destination. Incredible.
And even when he got to the promised land, he didn't exactly put down deep roots, did he?
Not at all. He made his home. Like a stranger in a foreign country, he lived in tents. And so did Isaac and Jacob, who shared the same promise. They were basically camping in the land they were supposed to inherit.
Why? Why live like that?
Because, the text says, their eyes were on something else. For he was looking forward to the city with foundations, whose architect and builder is God. Their temporary living arrangement showed they were waiting for a permanent, divinely built, unseen, heavenly city.
So their earthly actions were totally shaped by this unseen future hope. That makes sense.
And Abraham's story, it gets even more intense when you look at the promise of descendants.
Right, because he and Sarah were, well, past age, and she was barren. Humanly impossible for them to have kids, let alone nations of descendants.
Totally impossible from a visible perspective, yet by faith, Abraham was enabled to become a father. Why? Because he considered him faithful who had made the promise.
So his faith wasn't just hoping against hope. It was grounded in God's character, believing God was faithful and could actually do what he promised despite the obvious obstacles.
Exactly. Faith in God's faithfulness. And the result. From this one old man, descendants as numerous as the stars and as countless as the sand. Just unbelievable numbers flowing from that faith.
The chapter then pauses, reflecting on these early figures like Abraham, Isaac, Jacob.
Yeah, and it points out something crucial they all had in common. All these people were still living by faith when they died. They did not receive the things promised.
Wait, they didn't receive them?
Not the full, ultimate fulfillment. They only saw them and welcomed them from a distance. Their faith was real, commended, but the final payoff was still ahead when they died. Still unseen, in a way.
So they lived their whole lives oriented towards that future.
Pretty much. They admitted that they were aliens and strangers on Earth, saying they were looking for a country of their own. Not just going back home, but seeking a better country, a heavenly one.
Wow. And because they live like that, looking for that heavenly country.
Therefore, God is not ashamed to be called their God, for he has prepared a city for them. Their faith in that unseen reality sort of validated their relationship with God. He identified with them because of that forward-looking faith.
Okay, back to Abraham for a moment. The test. The really, really hard one.
Oh yeah, when God tested him, offered Isaac as a sacrifice. This is just gut-wrenching to think about.
Because Isaac was the promised son. God had said the descendants would come through him. How does that even work?
Exactly. The command seems to directly contradict the promise. But Abraham's faith found a way. The text explains he reasoned that God could raise the dead.
He figured God could bring Isaac back to life, even then.
That's what it says. His faith wasn't blind panic. It was rooted in reasoning about God's power and unseen reality. He believed God was powerful enough, even over death, to keep his promise. And, figuratively speaking, he did receive Isaac back from death. His certainty in God's unseen power and faithfulness enabled that incredible obedience.
That adds a whole different layer to it. Okay, then it briefly touches on the next generation.
Right, quickly. Isaac blessing his sons in regard to their future. Jacob dying, blessing his grandsons and worshiping, leaning on his staff, still looking ahead. And Joseph, near death, talking about the future exodus from Egypt and giving instructions about his own bones, based on a future he wouldn't see.
All focused on the future, the unseen outcome. Which leads us perfectly into Moses and the Exodus. Huge story.
Massive. And it starts with his parents. They hid baby Moses because they saw he was no ordinary child. They perceived something unseen about him, and because of that faith, were not afraid of the king's edict. Faith gave them courage against a very visible threat.
And Moses himself grows up in Pharaoh's palace, right? Could have had it all.
The ultimate privilege, potentially. But when he had grown up, refused to be known as the son of Pharaoh's daughter. He walked away from it.
Why?
Faith gave him a different perspective. He chose to be mistreated along with the people of God rather than to enjoy the pleasures of sin for a short time. He valued suffering with God's people over Egyptian luxury.
How could he make that choice?
Because he saw things differently. He regarded disgrace for the sake of Christ as of greater value than the treasures of Egypt. He was connecting his present struggle somehow with a future Messiah figure and reward. The text says explicitly he was looking ahead to his reward. That unseen reward completely changed the value of visible treasures.
Okay, so his focus was on the unseen future payoff. And that enabled him to leave.
Yep. By faith, he left Egypt, not fearing the king's anger. He persevered because he saw him who is invisible. Wow. Seeing the invisible God made the visible, angry king less terrifying. It gave him endurance.
And his faith was key in the Exodus events too, like the Passover.
Absolutely. He kept the Passover and the sprinkling of blood, obeying a specific command with faith in its unseen protective power against that unseen destroyer.
And the big one, the Red Sea.
The climax.
Yeah.
By faith, the people passed through the Red Sea as on dry land, acting on the seemingly impossible, trusting God's unseen power. But when the Egyptians tried to do so, they were drowned. They faced the visible reality without the faith, and it destroyed them.
The chapter then breezes through a few more examples. Jericho.
Right. The walls of Jericho fell after the people had marched around them for 7 days. Faith shown and just, obeying a weird command, trusting God for the result.
And Rahab.
Yeah, Rahab the prostitute. An outsider, but because she welcomed the spies, was not killed. Her faith in Israel's God led her to act against her own people, aligning with an unseen future based on what she'd heard and believed.
Then it just lists a whole bunch more names, doesn't it?
It does, like a rapid-fire summary. Gideon, Barak, Samson, Jephthah, David, Samuel, and the prophets, acknowledging there are tons more examples, and it sums up what they did through faith.
Right, the victories. Through faith, they conquered kingdoms, administered justice, and gained what was promised.
Shut the mouths of lions, quench the fury of the flames, escape the edge of the sword, real tangible deliverance and power, whose weakness was turned to strength, and who became powerful in battle and routed foreign armies. Faith leading to visible success.
But that's not the whole story the chapter tells, is it?
No, not at all. And this is so important. Right after listing those triumphs, it pivots hard. It shows the other side. While some women received back their dead, raised to life again, I mean, amazing miracles.
Others, the text says, were tortured and refused to be released so that they might gain a better resurrection.
Get that? Their faith didn't lead to escape. It led to enduring torture because they were fixed on a future, unseen, better resurrection. They valued that future reality more than their present life or freedom.
It goes on. Some faced jeers and flogging, chained and put in prison.
And worse, others were stoned, they were sawed in two, they were put to death by the sword, just brutal realities. They went about in sheepskins and goatskins, destitute, persecuted, and mistreated.
And that line, the world was not worthy of them.
Yeah, powerful. Their commitment to the unseen made them misfits in a world focused only on the visible. They wandered in deserts and mountains and in caves and holes in the ground. Faith for them led to hardship, exile, suffering.
So the definition holds across the board. Faith is that certainty in the unseen, whether it leads to conquering a kingdom or enduring being sawn in two. It's about trusting the invisible God and his future promise, no matter what's happening visibly.
Exactly. It's not just faith for a good outcome now, but faith in God regardless of the outcome now, because you're sure about the ultimate unseen reality.
And then it wraps up, bringing back that idea about not receiving the full promise yet.
Right. It says again, these were all commended for their faith, yet none of them received what had been promised. The absolute final fulfillment wasn't there for them in their lifetime.
And why not? What's the reason given?
It connects their story to, well, to us, to later believers. God had planned something better for us, so that only together with us would they be made perfect. Their faith journey is part of a bigger picture, heading towards a future completion, a perfection, that includes everyone who shares that faith across all time.
So their story isn't over. It points forward to a shared destiny.
Precisely. That unseen city, that better country they were looking for. It's a future reality for all of them, together.
Wow. Okay, so we've journeyed from faith understanding creation itself, through Abraham leaving home, Moses facing Pharaoh, victories, and then intense suffering and endurance. What a range.
It really covers the spectrum. But the core idea is consistent. Faith acts on what you can't see, looks towards a future hope, and endures present difficulty because it's certain about that greater unseen reality, the better country, the better resurrection, that city God is building.
Living like aliens and strangers because their true citizenship was elsewhere, by faith, and knowing they didn't get the final promise then, but are linked to this future perfection with us.
That connection across time is pretty profound.
It really is. So as you, listening, think about this deep dive. All these lives live with such conviction about the unseen. What does that stir in you? What might it look like practically to have a faith that stays sure of things hoped for, things unseen, especially when maybe things look difficult right now or the promise feels distant? And how could that kind of certainty maybe reshape how you see yourself living in the world today? Perhaps as someone also looking for a different kind of home.